Welcome to the Flip Tech East Coast Podcast, a podcast designed to introduce you to this year's teacher presenters. This year's conference is being held on June 29th and 30th at Collingswood High School in Collingswood, New Jersey, and it is being presented by the Flipped Learning Network. In this episode of the podcast, we introduce you to Gilbert Ng, who's flying to us all the way from Singapore. He's going to be speaking to us about Gamified Flipped Learning. If you are interested in hearing Gilbert or any of our other teacher presenters, please register at fliptech.fliplearning.org. Again, that's fliptech.fliplearning.org. And now here's Gilbert. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Flip Tech East Coast Podcast. And today we're so excited to have our furthest traveling presenter. We have Gilbert Ng from Singapore joining us. Gilbert, how are you today?
I'm good. Okay, you got it's like what, 9 p.m. at night at your place and 9 plus a.m. at my place.
Right. I was actually gonna say, how are you doing tomorrow? because we're doing this on 2 different days with the way that the time difference and stuff works out.
Okay.
So Gilbert, you're from Singapore, but this is the first time we've ever really met or talked.
Yep.
And so why don't you take a little bit of time and introduce who you are and to the audience and to myself. I'm interested to get to know you a little bit.
Okay, so you guys know my name. I'm Gilbert. My last name is Ng, N-G. It's a bit hard to pronounce for some people, so you're forgiven if you mispronounce it. It's fine. Okay, I'm in Singapore. We call me a junior college economics teacher. But I guess junior college means different things for different countries. I think it will mean grade 11 and 12 for you guys. So yeah, basically I'm a pre-university economics teacher. All right, and okay. I've been flipping from I think 2015, and I was, as I was telling Dave earlier, I was inspired to do flip learning because Aaron Sams came to Singapore to give a conference, a keynote speech, and I was very delighted that he touched on things like enhancing relationships, and the fact that he took 6 years, to properly flip his learning. Yeah, so it gave me courage, and it gave me and the idea of enhancing relationships resonated with me, because the earlier conceptions of flip learning or the flipped classroom, which I've heard of, is mainly just moving the homework to class time and moving the content dissemination to the home time. It was very rudimentary, and it was just so basic.
It didn't seem very interesting.
That's right.
Right.
It didn't seem worth my. So I'm very glad that Aaron Sams is coming to Flip Tech. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think you're about right when you talk about. Did you say junior college? Is that what it was, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that in the United States, a junior college is kind of like the first couple of years, would be like a 2-year university that you would take or go to before you went to a 4-year school. And so
so
it's kind of the same thing and kind of different. So they definitely would be folks that are like 18, 19, 20 years old in a junior college. And so if you're talking about 16, 17, 18-year-olds, you're probably pretty close there in terms of what is going on. And it's super cool that you get to see Aaron, and you my guess is, meet him and hang out with him.
Yes, I'll get his autograph for all the books I've bought.
Well, he has a bunch of them. He's got like 7 of them, so...
No, I have 4, so that's good enough.
Okay, right. That's good. So it's funny because... some of the other international folks, from Colombia, they talked about how much Aaron has meant to them and who, what they have done in their own work. So Gilbert, it's awesome to have you. You're going to be speaking about gamified flipped learning in our at our session. But before we get into that, have you presented at all? Are you a well-traveled, seasoned presenter, or is this kind of like your first thing, or somewhere in the middle?
This is okay. In Singapore, I've been presenting in local conferences. I presented to other economics teachers. I had one international presentation in Hong Kong, and the audience members were from I think Hong Kong. Yep, Hong Kong for sure. Hong Kong, Australia, New Zealand. And the most interesting region was Tatarstan, which is a part of Russia, but not exactly Russia. I think Russia is a federation, if I'm not wrong. So they have some interesting political relationships. So they're kind of under the umbrella, but they have their autonomy.
Right,
so it was
right.
very interesting to speak to the Tatarstan people. The principal was leading the delegation, and he was very young. He was like 31. And he was very energetic and hopeful for his people. And yeah, I was really inspired by him. So yeah, that was my one international conference experience. Yep.
Wow, that's cool. So
Yep.
so now you're spreading your wings and coming even further.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're going west or east to get here because you're pretty much on the other side of the globe. I don't know if you're going to go over the Pacific Ocean or hang out over Europe, but
I have no idea. I'll be. Whoa, that's good. Okay. My transit stop is in Shanghai, so I'm not sure how.
Shanghai's north. Like,
not sure how that works. Yeah.
we'll figure it out, I guess. Yeah. I was going to say, because, you get to come further east or go all the way west. I don't know which way it is, but whatever.
Yeah.
So it seems like you've done a little bit of flipped learning presentations, and you've had a pretty successful presentation in Hong Kong there. That sounds really exciting. Yep. So what makes you want to keep presenting? Like, that is that something that you seek out and want to do, or like what's the story?
I actually do seek it out. I mean, that's the reason why I would actually write a proposal for this all the way across the planet.
Right.
I think a few things. The preparation for a presentation always grounds me back to why I'm doing this, and the original learning theories. I guess, for those of you who are not familiar, in Singapore, generally, academics is very important. It's a kind of a high-pressure environment. So whatever new solutions we try to initiate, once they're approved, it will be subject to that high-stress academic environment. And it's very easy to lose sight of the original ethos. And generally, for me, the flipped learning ethos should be relationships and student-centric type of teaching and learning. But unfortunately, in a high-stress academic environment, you tend to lean the other way, which is teacher-centric. You follow. I mean, you want to pass the exam. You want to do well. You need to follow the certain guidelines, rules, writing behaviors, and all that. So so presenting for flipped learning in particular brings me back to the original ethos. And of course, I have to do my research, make sure what I'm spouting is not nonsense. So I'll have to reread the theories and reread Aaron Sam and John Bergman's books and all that, to ground myself back in. So that part is great for me. It's always a wonderful self-reflective period. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Just to hear you say that you like to do it because it grounds you. That's that's almost completely opposite of what I always go when I'm presenting. I've presented a couple of times, and it always makes me feel like I'm riding really high. Like, hey,
Yeah, that too. Yeah, because we're among like-minded people. And we look at each other, we talk to each other, like, yes, you get me. Yes, we speak the same language. Yes, I'm talking about this particular ethos and idea and not the other one.
Right.
And somehow flipped learning is very easily misconstrued. I mean, I misconstrued it the first time I've heard about it. So yeah, you're right as well. A conference does make me feel kind of high.
Yeah. It's funny because I knew exactly what you were saying though, like that self-reflective period where you're thinking about what you're doing, and then hey, I have to present this to folks. It can really ground you and allow you for a lot of self-reflection. A little side note, maybe because I'm interested, and if I'm interested, probably the audience is interested. In the United States, we have the system of education. There's private education where people can pay lots of money to go to a private school where there's maybe a lot more pressure for performance for both students and teachers. And then there's public education, which is paid for through tax dollars. Is there a similar system in Singapore, or how does that work?
Okay, I think, let me try and think through the whole system. I think mainly for citizens, for locals, it's all public education.
Okay.
right? So you have private education, but these are the international schools.
Okay.
For the expatriates who come from overseas to work, and they still want a somewhat international education compared to the local syllabus. So it's all public,
Okay.
basically. Yeah.
And you work in one of the public
Yeah.
schools.
Yeah. Yeah. My school, okay, they call it an independent school.
Okay.
So it's still funded by the government, but the principal has more leeway to make his own decisions.
Okay.
Okay, but it's kind of you're still being controlled. It's like a kite.
Yeah.
You can fly wherever you want, but there's a string down there. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's like everything. There's always strings attached, right? It's there's always something going on.
Yeah, strings attached. Yes. Right.
Well, I mean, I would love to talk to you about how Singapore works, but that's not what the interview is about. You're presenting on gamified flipped learning at our conference on June 29th and June 30th. And if you could, why don't you explain a little bit about your presentation and what is gamified flipped learning? What are you going to be talking about?
Okay. All right. I guess my first introduction to the idea of gamified flipped learning was actually from the flip mastery method. Okay, so I guess all of you, the audience members, will know that the flip mastery method basically is kind of a stage-based system. Okay, you have to do the work, watch the content or read the content, do the practice questions, and then you do some sort of test. Okay, if you do well in the test, you move on. If you don't do well in the test, okay, it shows evidence that maybe your learning is not up to mark. So you may have to go and redo some of the stuff, or maybe other lessons, extra lessons will be prescribed and so on, right? This sounds very game-like, don't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's like you get an extra life every time you don't do well,
that's
right?
Yeah. You get to repeat, and you get instant feedback from your tutor because it's a flipped learning situation, where the teacher is always around. Okay, so that got me thinking. Why not gamify this? And furthermore, the idea of mastery in my current subject and level is a bit difficult because we're talking about economics, which is a very abstract kind of life experience needed kind of subject.
Right.
It's hard to understand what's going on in the world when you're so young. So there's no way I can call it mastery. All right. And based on the examples I've seen for mastery learning, it's kind of lower levels where the emphasis is a bit more on the lower order thinking, the lower grades, I guess. But for high level thinking, I thought the word mastery wasn't appropriate. There's no way you can master economics concepts just based on a few weeks of learning. No way. You need a lifetime to do it. So instead of calling it flip mastery, I thought maybe why not call it gamified flip learning? All right, and the gamification, I took a course on Coursera. By Kevin Werbeck, I think, from the University of Pennsylvania. Of course, I had no interaction with him at all. He designed the course. I watched his lectures. I did the assignments and all that. And from there, I picked out some stuff. And I think one basic thing was that the design of the progression is what makes gamification work. Because the progression design is so gentle and inviting that you want to play the game.
Right.
All right. And all these other stuff like experience points and badges is layered upon a good progression design to just make students visualize progress. So basically that's what I've done. Okay, when I first started gamification, I thought it was about the badges and the superpowers that you can award students. I thought of it more as a reward mechanism. So I tried gamification once and it wasn't that successful. So I tried it again with more insights from this Coursera course. And it kind of worked. So I'm excited to share with the audience members how gamification can actually be very simple. And it's actually just good instructional design.
Yeah. And that last thing is exactly what I've been trying to say to the audience all the time, is that good teaching is good teaching, whether you're gamifying, whether you're flipping, whether you're a traditional teacher. Like, good teaching is good teaching. So, a lot of times you don't have to bait your students with all of the superpowers, like you say, right? Like you could have one badge at the end of a progression, and those kids will want to get that one single badge.
Yeah. Yep.
If you're doing everything good teaching, making good connections, doing all those things that are the foundations of flipped learning.
If you design that progression in such an inviting manner, they feel, the first few tasks are very easy. They feel good about it. I mean, it shouldn't be too easy. It should be challenging enough and yet inviting enough to hook them in. And then you slowly, gently, it sounds simple, but it's not easy to do.
It's definitely not. It takes a real master to know what the slow push is for each of your students. What age are these students at your school generally?
Okay, 17 and 18.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to get an age, right? Just so our audience can kind of correlate with what age you're teaching developmentally, and then, it's definitely, your audience. Well, who do you think your audience is going to be? Like, who do you think is going to get the most out of showing up to Gilbert Ng's Gamified Flipped Learning presentation?
Well, I guess anyone who's interested in gamification. I think the flipped learning part is pretty straightforward. Whoa, okay, connection's gone.
I can still hear you.
Okay. Oh, but I can't see you anymore. Okay, so I'll just carry on.
Yeah,
right.
Sure.
Okay, so
am I here?
What was the question? Okay, the question was who's gonna
what? Who's gonna get the most out of your presentation?
All right. I guess anyone who's interested in gamification, because flipped learning as a method, I guess everyone would know. So basically, I use flipped learning as a paradigm more than a method. So the paradigm is that the ownership is the students. The ownership is flipped from the teacher to the student. The content dissemination role is flipped away from the teacher, and the teacher's role is flipped into a feedback role. So in my conception of gamified flipped learning, I'm sure others have their own conceptions. My role is basically feedback, loads of feedback. So I guess the audience, what I can add value to is to show teachers that gamification can be very simple. It can be something like what you said, Dave, which is just have a very nice progression and just one batch thereafter. It doesn't have to be fancy graphics, because there are some websites out there like Classcraft.
I was just gonna say, like something like Classcraft. That's about the game a lot of times than about the learning. I mean, not that it's not valuable for some people, but it takes a little bit more to make it about the learning.
Yes. I tried it, and it was too complicated, and it distracted from the learning. So I just want to present my point of view that you don't have to use, because Classcraft dazzles you. You have nicely designed avatars, superpowers, and all that. Right. But to me, maybe I don't know how to use it well, but it distracts. So you can gamify in a very simplistic manner. Okay, I started with a very simplistic manner, and then I presented at one local conference, and a professor from the National Institute of Education in Singapore approached me, and she told me that she was developing a mobile application. So also, it was perfect. It was a perfect fit. So we spoke to her. We had some development meetings, and then we used the app later on to roll out the gamification.
Oh,
but
cool.
Everything, it's very cool. But everything came after the manual version. I just had a progression card,
right,
and stamp. Right. I didn't even have any badge. It was just stamps.
Okay.
But at the beginning, I told them the gamification is not in any fancy mode. The gamification is merely that I will visualize your progress with these stamps, and I will give you instant feedback. And you can try it again and again and again until you get it.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's gamification for me. Yeah.
Wow. Well, now you don't even need to come to the United States. Now we've just heard your whole thing, and now you're good. No, and so just in the interest of fairness, I have to say that every person that I've interviewed, I have been so enraptured by what they're saying. Like, I want to be right there in the front row saying, "Oh, Gilbert, I have 500 questions." Like, it's just so exciting. And the passion that I see, that you have about it is just, it's infectious. This is the high. This is the reason why I wanted to organize this, is not that it's bad, but a lot of times I'm the only person in the room that knows anything about flipped learning.
Yeah, that's the same. Yeah,
right?
that's the
And then I have to go back to like, here's what flip learning is. It's not just giving
yeah,
them a video, which
right.
is fine. But I enjoy being able to skip over that and talk about the finer points of
Exactly.
how flip learning really works in other people's classrooms.
Yeah, that's why I'm so glad you guys are organizing this, and that you give international presenters a chance to do this. This is fantastic. Yeah.
Well, we're just really excited for you to come. It's going to be a great time.
Yep, yep.
I'm glad I can edit these because I just had the last question in my head and then I completely forgot what it was. I was like, oh, here.
Well, it's almost 9. It's almost 10 p.m. your time.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'd rather stay up late than go to bed early. But
Okay.
Okay, so Gilbert, we talked about who's going to get the most out of people attending your session, but the other part of being at a conference, and we've touched on this, but I think it's important, is that the other half is you just being an attendee, right? So other than meeting Aaron Sams and hanging out, what do you hope to get out of coming over to the United States and attending Flip Tech East Coast?
Well, I think one of my largest, I guess not concerns, but something I'm curious about is how do schools do a whole school flipped learning experience? Because for me, my flip learning solution or intervention, whatever you call it, is only about 6 weeks. And then we have to go back to the traditional mode because, we have to prepare them for exams. And I dispute that actually. I think flip learning can prepare them for exams, but yeah, it will take some time to change minds.
Right.
Yeah, but I'm very curious how schools like Collinswood High School scaled up flip learning in a coherent manner where everyone has roughly the same understanding of flip learning. Because like what you said, generally you and I are basically the only people in the room who really know what's going on. The rest just read it like Twitter. This is the headlines. And that's it. That's all I need to know. The rest, TLDR. Don't bother,
TLDR. That's the... I had never heard that phrase before until this week. And it was one of the other organizers of the conference, our sponsorship chair. She texted me. She was like, TLDR, we'll talk later. And I was like, what does TLDR mean? And she was like, too long, didn't read. I was like, okay, I get it. And so then now you're talking TLDR, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so funny.
This type of language is from the students,
Of course. LOL.
Yes, lol.
I know. I always use outdated stuff to kind of perpetuate me being like the dorky science teacher. Like I'm like, oh, LOL. That means laugh out loud.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, Gilbert, I'm going to ask you if I can ask you another question. I don't know if you've seen any of the already pre-recorded interviews, but I've asked everybody.
Yep.
I've asked everybody a question, an extra question, and so just so the audience knows, I did send Gilbert a list of questions, which we touched upon all of them here in this interview. He even had nice, which nobody saw, was nice printed out responses that I'm sure helped him answer those questions. Yeah, right, right, which was great. But there's one question that I think is that I want to ask that you can't prepare for. So that way I get a kind of an authentic, non-rehearsed, not that any of it was rehearsed, but you know what I mean. Okay, so how long have you been kind of doing this gamified flipped learning thing? For how many years, do you think?
Oh, okay. I've been doing it since 2016, yeah.
2016. So for 2 or 3 years, you've been doing this. Okay, so probably your classroom looks a lot different than it did 4 years ago.
Oh yes, it's chaos. It's a mess.
Okay, so that's what I was going to ask you. Pick 3 words to describe what your classroom looks like today.
Oh wow. Okay. 3 words. Well, chaos.
Okay, all right. Yeah, you beat me to it without even me asking the question. You're like, it
Right.
looks like chaos.
So yeah, it's chaos, but it's energizing chaos, I guess.
Now, is
What
that 2
else?
words or is that 1?
Yeah, energizing. Yes, it is energizing. And the last word would be, I guess, relationships. Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it relationships because that's what flipped learning has allowed you to do?
Yes, because I'm no longer just in front. Because when you're teaching, you think you're talking to 25, 30 students. Actually, you're talking to no one. You're talking over their head. You're talking to yourself, and some of them happen to agree with what you've said to yourself, but that's it. But when under a flipped learning paradigm, you're talking to them in an intimate small group setting, being close to their faces, looking them in the eye, and saying what you had to say is very different from being right in front, and then they are supposed to be looking at you. Most of the time, they're not.
Right.
And then yeah, every now and then you get one student to answer your question, but that one student is interacting for that split second. And then he or she sits down, and then everyone just happens. I mean, I'm sure they are attentive students, but I'm not talking to them. It's as good as listening to a radio show. So yeah, relationships. I get to know them beyond the subject. I get to know that some of my students are doing competitions outside of class. I get to know that they're helping. What's this? Members of parliament, we call them, which I think parliament will be your Congress, right?
Sure.
They're helping members of parliament do up letters of appeal for their constituent members and so on. I get to know all these things which I would not have the time for, or I could if I had time outside of class to hang out with them, which with our packed teaching schedule, it's hard to do.
Sure.
But yeah, so and I guess. Okay, I'm going to add a bit more to this. I'm going to process the 3 words. If I had to rank them, relationships came first. Because of the relationships, okay, it became very energizing. And because of the relationships, I am okay with the chaos. Because I know them, okay, they trust my system. I know them. If they need to take a break, sleep on the desk, go ahead. Okay, if they need to do something else at that moment, I'll negotiate with them. Like, you have to do the work at home, okay, but for now, we can do something else. So this chaos, establishing good relationships creates a trust. So I can allow the chaos to happen, and it becomes very energizing. Yep.
Yeah, and it's funny that we had talked earlier about good teaching is good teaching.
Yes.
Whether you're in Singapore or the United States, or whether you're teaching economics, or whether you're teaching chemistry, like, good teaching is good teaching. And I think the heart of good teaching is having good relationships with the students. And there's an old, like, cheesy phrase in America that's like, kids don't care what you know until they know that you care.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's cheesy, but it's true. That's the kids need to know that you care about who they are and what they do. And so, yeah. So, wow, Gilbert, what a great opportunity this was for me to talk to you. You're dynamic and passionate and very energizing yourself. It was really good to have you on the show here.
Well, you were energizing yourself, man. Okay, I feed off you, bro.
And that's right. That's Gilbert Ng saying bro on our podcast. That's really good. So, Gilbert, thank you so much for joining us. And you're going to be speaking at Flip Tech East Coast, and you're going to be talking about gamified flipped learning on June 29th and 30th. We can't wait to see you there.
Can't wait to.
That's it for this episode of the Flip Tech East Coast podcast. We hope that you join us at the conference. Again, for more information or to register, please visit fliptech.flippedlearning.org. Again, that website is fliptech.flippedlearning.org, and we can't wait to see you there.